so much. I'm so thrilled to be in Chicago. Actually, the first time I was here, I was what you call a twinkle in my parents' eyes. They met at the Art Institute, and so they moved back to Seattle to have me, my brother. So I was kind of here. So I'm going to let you know off the bat that I like interaction. I don't like to be a talk-at person. I like to engage with you all. So I might ask for, how you felt about something that I have us all do or whatever. And feel free to just raise your hand or yell something out. And if we can't hear it, I'll repeat it. And if you don't want to do it, that's cool too. So I would like to actually start with an activity, a little experiment that will illustrate something that led up to my near-death experience and integrates it in a way. And that's, I want to ask you, how many of you are very aware that there's a voice always talking to you in your head? All the time. Okay, I'd like to do this fun little thing. You have you close your eyes for a moment and just relax and listen to what that weird voice is saying. Okay, I'm going to have you open your eyes. Did anyone hear some chit-chat? Anyone want to yell out? I mean, usually it's kind of dumb stuff. Yeah.
I just you're here, and probably for different birds, that's all I want to do. So,
Oh, that's beautiful. You're here was the message. And I love that because it's almost like creating presence, right? Instead of being in the future or the past, it's like you're here, you're here, get present. It's beautiful. That was actually a good one. Instead of, I'm hungry, I forgot to pee. It's like, oh, she has red hair. All the weird things. Anyone else want to mention what they're, yeah?
Mine was so similar. It said, you're here for a reason.
Ooh, you're here for a reason. Right on. I love that. Any others? Yeah, in the back.
Well, I think I have what the Zen Buddhists call monkey mind. I had probably 100 different things. I can't remember one of them.
I hear you, brother. Yes, yes.
I just heard that I'm in a good place, and I'm calm. I think maybe that's because we did a little meditation.
Oh, lovely. So that was monkey mind if you didn't hear it, and this was I'm in a good place and I'm calm. And they're all good. Yes, sir.
Mine was, I love you, whether you think so or not. I really do.
I love you whether you think so or not. It's true. Okay. I want this guy's mind. Right on. And one more.
I heard it's going to be good, and then I heard blow the energy out of your head, and then I thought, oh, this could get really bad. So I took over and I said, I bring the light now. Because I find if I get in touch and it's gibberish, I can change it.
Right. Right. Nice. Nice. That was too complex for me to express, but it was beautiful. I'd like to go back now and have you close your eyes, and we're going to do a little adjustment on our experiment. So go ahead and tune into that voice again. And now keep your eyes closed, but notice that you're sitting there listening to your thoughts. So maybe you may or may not be actually focusing on the thoughts as much, but you're noticing that you're sitting there focusing on the thoughts. And now switch back into being the person who's listening to your thoughts. And then switch back into the person observing you listening to the thoughts. Okay, and you can open your eyes. Was anyone able to notice the difference? It's kind of odd. Anyone able to?
Well, when I was observing, there was nothing there.
When I was observing, there was nothing there.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
It's an odd switch. Very interesting. Anyone else? Yes.
Oh, I just kept thinking, you're all right, you're all right. And just, there's no other place right now, except you're all right.
Cool. And then when you switched into being the observer of you hearing the thoughts, did you notice a difference, how that felt?
Yeah, more mature, more human, more understanding. Oh, she's finally content. She's finally in where she's finally where she's supposed to be, and living at the moment where she's supposed to be.
That's interesting. I don't know if you heard that. More mature, more human. She's living and where she's basically where she needs to be. And one more?
When I started observing mine, I could just feel my body. It's like a waiting game.
Feeling
I
her
thought
body.
collective mind, but that was it. I could feel like my legs were crossed.
Feeling that her legs were crossed. Yes, isn't that fascinating?
It really was.
There's like these two perspectives, and it's kind of subtle, and yet it's profound.
I
And
also felt finally from the second voice, was finally.
oh, the second voice was saying finally. It's very interesting. So the question then I have is, if you're the one hearing your own thoughts, and you're also the one that's observing yourself hearing your own thoughts, well, which one are you? They're kind of different. So I'll just leave that question open and go into my story now. So my near-death experience actually started, the things that led up to it were very important, so I'm going to go back a few months. Who here has heard of the band Pearl Jam? Okay, so I'm friends with one of the guitar players, Stone Gossard, and he had me go with him on tour as a singer with him in a separate band, not with Pearl Jam. And we were in Brooklyn, and we were on stage. Everything was going fine as usual. I was singing and dancing, having fun. When all of a sudden I just saw this guy in the very front row who was, you know, baseball hat backwards, big dude, and he was like this. Not into it at all. And, you know, he's usually, you know, you see a couple people that aren't into it, but there's, you know, several hundred people totally having a good time. One guy in the front, and I tune into him. And I'm watching him, and I'm like singing and dancing and going, what's going on with the guy? So here's my thought process. What's wrong with him, number one? Quickly change to what's wrong with our band, because we had a change in some of the personnel, and maybe we aren't sounding as good. And then guess where it went really fast after that?
What's wrong with you?
What's wrong with me and my singing? And I thought, maybe I can't hear myself in the monitors, and I'm singing off key, and oh no, here comes that note that I have trouble hitting, and maybe I'm gonna go wrong. Why did Stone invite me? I can't even sing. Like, it was just like going down. And I made it through that show. And I'll tell you, it was super surreal. Part of my brain was focused on remembering lyrics, singing, entertaining, cueing with the band. Another part of my brain had tuned into what I call the Barbara Ireland negative thought radio station. And it's like there it is, and it was like this stream of negative thoughts about how crummy I am, basically. The self-doubts and the worries and the past and all that crud that we say to ourselves if we hear it. And then the third part of me was what you did in that exercise a moment ago. It was like standing kind of behind me, watching this whole thing and observing me, doing these dual types of my brain, the negative thoughts and the interaction as a musician. And it was going, wow, look at you. You're doing all that. You're on stage and that's interesting. And I was like, I don't know what's going on, but I was glad this, the show went off. I don't know if anyone noticed. That night I got in bed and I was like, what happened? And I thought, are those negative thoughts going on in my head all the time? And I'm just not aware of them? Because I don't remember hearing all that. I know some of them. And I thought, I've had therapy, I've done these things. I thought I'd kicked them out, but no, they were there all right. So I thought, okay, I need to get rid of these things. What can I do? If therapy didn't do it, what'll do it? I said, oh, I have a great idea. I'm going to sign up for one of those camps where you go and you do scary things and you push your boundaries and you develop all this courage. That'll kick them out. So I signed up, and it was in months in the future, and I went to sleep, and I was like, cool. Well, the day came to go to this camp. Thank God I roped my best friend in to go in with me. And we took, a bus, a train, a cab, all these different transportations to get to it because it was so remote. It was up near Vancouver Island. And we go up there, with our tent, and we're walking up, and they said, oh, no, you can't set up your tent till you sign this form. We're looking at it, and it's a liability form from hell. It's like, if you fall off a cliff and lose your arms and get eaten by wolves and die, that's not our problem. And we're like, oh my God, what are they going to do here? But we signed it. And then they had to sign a non-disclosure form, so I can't tell you what we did. Some hints. So we went and set up our tent. It was a week long, and I'll tell you, every single day it was like, oh my God, what's going to happen today? It was scary heights, fire, super scary people that would come out and do things that just freak you out, and how are you going to handle this stuff, and sleep deprivation, 3 hours a night of sleep, for a freaking week. So by the last main day, first of all, I was pretty proud of myself. Every day I was getting through it, I was developing courage, I'm like, yeah, I'm getting rid of those negative thoughts, everything's going fine. Well, the last day, it was an endurance experience, having to do with bricks, that's all I'll say. And we had to go along this long route in the sun with some bricks. And I was doing fine. We were paired up, so I had this sweet girl from Mexico City with me who was really young, and she said, oh, please go in front of me, lead the way. And I was like, sure, I'll lead the way. So we're going along, everything's fine. And about halfway through, I was like, feeling a little weird. I don't know what that's about. We started coming back, and things started getting really weird. First of all, I started seeing all these flashes of light, and then auras around everything. And then when my partner would talk to me, it was like, Barbara, sabes the water in this but what if we shouted them? I was like, what is she saying? I can't understand her. And yet someone really far away, for some reason, I could hear them crystal clear, as if they were right next to me. My senses were completely jumbling up. My legs were all wobbly. I was like, I must be getting dehydrated. So I was drinking more and more and more water. I was in the sun. And as we come up to, I did make it to the end, so we come up to the finish line, there's, you know, how people make a border for you to run through at the end, and they're all clapping and everything for you. So they were doing that, but it was terrifying to me. It was like a horror movie, because they were strobing now, and they looked kind of like ghoulish laughter, and it was all echoing, go, it was like, oh my God, flashes of light. And it was really scary, and I sat down and I said to this guy I'd seen around the camp, please find a medic, I think I'm gonna faint. And he was like, I don't know if he was like smoking tons of pot or whatever, but he was just super mellow and slow. And he's like, oh okay. And I'm like, dude, will you hurry up, right? So like 15, 20 minutes are going by, and sitting there going, oh God, I'm about to pass out or something. He comes back alone and says, oh, they said, just sit down for a while and you'll be fine. And I was like, oh, I don't think anyone understands what's happening. So I had some people help me get back to the main camp. I started asking everyone for a medic. Finally, this guy came up, and he took one look at me, and he was like, he turned white. Because I looked, my friend told me later, I had like gray skin and these super dark circles under my eyes, and I was like that, basically The Walking Dead. And he turns out, the poor guy, he did his best, but I think he was like a 3-hour CPR training medic. And which blows my mind, they didn't have a true medic there. But he did give me electrolytes, which later I found out really helped. But he took blood pressure, and every reading was making him more and more afraid. What actually turned out happening, what was going on with me, was a combination of two things. One was heat stroke from that sun, but more importantly for my body is something called hyponatremia, which is when the sodium in your blood is washed out and your blood pressure crashes. So I was having stroke symptoms with my senses, and then the blood pressure was crashing. And either one of those things can kill you, and I had both of them going at once. And apparently marathoners actually have hyponatremia sometimes because they're pushing their body so much, and they're sweating, and they're drinking water, and all the sodium's coming out of their body. And all week long, that's all I'd been doing, sweating and drinking water like a maniac. And apparently my body doesn't hold salt much either, I found out later. So, of course, I wasn't thinking I was gonna die. Like, how strange would that be, you know? So I didn't say, you know, take me instantly to a hospital. This was before cell phones, and so it was very remote anyway. So he said, well, let's take you back to your tent. So he put me in this weird cart that went over everything. Like, I don't know what this machine was I was in, but it was like going over bushes and rocks. And I was like, I did not hallucinate that. And we got back to my tent. It was too hot, so I was laying under a tree. And my best friend found me by then, and she knew something very serious was going on. And I was laying there, he said, I'll come back and check on you. And the first thing I noticed was my left leg disappeared. Like, I couldn't feel it at all anymore. And I started screaming, my left leg, Michelle, my left leg, it's gone. Then my right leg, gone. My left arm, my right arm. So now all I was a torso and a head, basically. And I felt kind of trapped, like I couldn't move. And I was crying in a way that I've never cried before. It came from so deep. I knew something serious was happening now. And this odd thing began, very subtle at first. But you may have read in different books about how your life energy goes out of the top of your head. And I could feel it. I could feel it coming out of the top of my head. And it was like this little gentle breeze, weird feeling. And I was like, oh no, I read about that. That can't be happening. And I laid there, and I was crying and freaking out. My friend was doing Reiki on me and praying and stuff. And right then, the most interesting thing happened. This movie began to play of 2 weeks earlier from a band rehearsal with my brother that wasn't going well. And we had had a kind of bad interaction. And it's still framed, the movie stopped, and there was this image of this moment and this voice, not the voice that we heard just at the beginning of this, not that voice I've heard, no voice out there, this neutral, male-ish voice, very calm, said, "What were you thinking right then?" And I said, "Oh," and I told the voice what I was thinking, and as soon as I did, the image went away. A new movie instantly started up from another period, a month earlier. It freeze-framed. "Why did you turn your head right then? What were you thinking?" It's like, oh, well, I was thinking that. Then as soon as I answered, another movie. "Why did you raise your eye right then? What were you thinking?" And this went on for 4 hours. I asked my friend later, how long was that? 4 hours of these movies. And they were all about my adult life, none from my childhood, which was really interesting to me. And every one of them was about my thoughts and occasionally about my feelings. And I have to admit to you, this is kind of funny later, there were 3 times when I tried to lie. Because the actual thought I had in my head was so petty or jealous or something that I thought that would be dumb to say. I don't know who I thought I was talking to. But so I came up with a story, and it said, and it was so kind, and it said, "Are you sure?" I said, "Well, actually, I was feeling blah, blah, blah." So after 3 times of trying to lie my way out of dumb thoughts, I realized I better tell the truth. So that went on for all these hours, and then and I was super engaged. I wasn't afraid anymore. I was kind of distracted and amazed what is going on. And at that moment, it said, "Okay, we're done here for now. You have a choice. Would you like to stay or go?" And I realized at that moment, over that amount of time, I had continued to have, my body had continued shutting down, and it felt like, I can describe it as having a foot in each world. And I was on that cusp between life and death. Now, I didn't have one of those medical deaths where people die for a period, but I was right there on the edge, and it felt like a veil, this amazing veil between the 2 worlds. And what I felt on that other side was this indescribable peace and welcoming and warmth and love that was 360 degrees and all seeped through every cell of my body. And it's nothing like anything I'd ever experienced on earth, even with, your most beloved pet, or when you look at a flower and you can't believe that flower exists. It wasn't like that, what I was feeling. And I'll tell you, the choice to go there was extremely strong. Because I knew this vibe, that's fun over there. What I'd be coming back to are the hassles of life, the struggles of life, the versions of suffering that all of us have, my negative thoughts. What am I going to do with my life? All the crummy stuff we have to go do, think about. And so I asked questions to make my decision, and I'm going to go tell you some of that discussion a little bit later in this talk. But because of that discussion, I decided to come back. And it said, "Okay, good. This is what you need to do when you come back. The very first week you come back, you have to go to these 4 different people, and you have to tell them these different things." And that I'll also cover later in the talk. And I did that, and that was amazing. But okay, so the moment I said I want to come back and everything was clear, I instantly felt that air, life force going back into my body, into my head. Each of my limbs came back within just like 4 minutes. It was super fast. Now, I was exhausted, but I was okay. I don't know how blood pressure, all that works, but something was fine now. The moment I opened my eyes, just thinking of that moment of being back on this deeply amazing, incredible plane of the earth still brings tears to my eyes. Because the sun had come down to that beautiful kind of magic hour, you know, and everything's kind of glowing amber. And I saw the back of my friend's hair was this beautiful auburn, and she was quiet in prayer, holding my hand. And I saw this big old fat bumblebee just buzzing around this beautiful flower. And I thought, oh my God, the experiences that we get here in our body on this earth are blowing my mind. And I'm sorry, you guys, but I was so glad to have chosen to come back. Now that first month was over the top beautiful because I was fully present for everything. And it would take me hours to eat food because I'd look at, you know, this peach. I remember this peach. It was these colors of like a sunset. And it was fuzzy like a little animal. And then the smell of it was just so fragrant. And the juice dripping down, it was super sensuous. I was like, what's this experience of eating? Oh my God, you know. I was smelling every flower I passed. I mean, it took me hours to get places. And I was hearing music now totally different. It wasn't just going through into my ears. It was through my entire body. And I was understanding lyrics in a completely different way. Everything was deep and rich and all my senses. I mean, I love my senses now more than I ever did before. So that month was over the top. And then slowly I started getting used to life, as we all do. And I started eating my food while I was working. I wouldn't sniff every single flower. Music I could put on in the background and enjoy it, kind of back there. Worst of all, the negative thoughts started coming back. And I had been free of them for a whole month. You can't imagine the joy of that. But, you know, I started hearing some self-doubt coming back, some self-criticism coming back, some old resentments coming back. And one of my terrible habits that I had was worrying, specifically about one person in particular, but also what people thought of me and all the crap we do. And then I started hearing those worries again. And I was like, you gotta be kidding. Not only did I go to this huge camp and survive, but I survived a near-death experience and I still have to have these dumb thoughts? That is not fair. And so, so that's when I sat down and I said to myself, what was the common denominator of all those questions during what I now understand to be a life review? What was the common denominator? And that's when it dawned on me. They were all about my thoughts, and specifically my negative thoughts. And I thought, okay, if that was my message that I got, then apparently I need to figure out how to stop this flow of negative thoughts. And it wasn't just a whole random series of negative thoughts. It was negative thoughts that would come back again and again. The same dumb ones would come back again and again. And I call them looping thoughts now. The kind that you can't get out of your head, especially with worry. It's like once I'm on a worry track, it was just like I was worrying, period. There's nothing else to do. And so when I realized that, I began research in neuroscience and cellular biology about our emotions and finding out what on earth is going on with thoughts. What are they? What is depressed thought? What is anxious thought? What does the spiritual tradition say about this? And I found out one thing is that there's two types of negative thoughts. I just mentioned it briefly. But there's the negative thought that goes in your head and then it goes out. And you just kind of go, oh, yeah, okay, I'm dealing with that now. There's the other kind of negative thought that you bring to work. You tell everyone at work about this dumb thing. Now it's contagious to them. Now they're thinking about, yeah, that's bad, and I hate our boss too. I don't know if you've ever been in an office where someone comes in who's one of these negative thought complainer types, and it changes the whole vibe of the office. It brings everyone down because they're contagious. These looping thoughts are contagious. And not just to other people, but to ourselves. Now if I'm thinking about the rotten boss, now I'm thinking about the other rotten bosses I've had, and all the other bad things about the job. And it's very contagious. It's like a virus of negative thinking. Yeah, I don't know what's happening, but that sounded like a negative thought. Exactly. And so once I noticed that I was having these looping thoughts, then I began research into how to stop, like how to interrupt the loop. And I used myself as a guinea pig. I did research for about 3 years in this. And I found out, I really was feeling better and better the more I was finding ways to help this. And I developed something called the de-looping method, where you're stopping those loops. And that's what I'm teaching tomorrow in a workshop. It's from 1 to 3. And excuse me, if you're interested, if you have worries and things like that, that might be helpful. I'm going to briefly go over the steps here today, just to give you an idea of it. And then, okay, I want to say, I forgot to mention, I received 3 major gifts from my near-death experience. So the first one is about the thoughts. And so I want to go over that with you. And then, I know we take a break at around 3. Then we'll go into the other two gifts I had. So, so the de-looping method is, it has 3 phases. The first phase is all about interrupting the thoughts. The second phase is about cleaning out the emotions that are stuck. And the third phase is about reprogramming the mind. Now once you've cleaned it out, you get to start putting something cool back in there that you actually want. So the first phase is what my book is all about. It's 4 steps. And it's neuroscience based, and it's about changing the neural pathways that we have in our brain. Because when we're looping on something that we don't want, it's a literal electrical pathway in our brain that gets ingrained in there. And if you think about what beliefs are thoughts that you have thought so many times, and they're so ingrained that they become your worldview. And so if we can alter the way we're on this pathway and jump off and start creating other pathways that are more helpful for our lives, that's how we change a lot of life, our worldview, our beliefs, everything. So the first 4 steps, the first one is detecting your negative thoughts. That's one of the reasons I wanted to do that opening meditation with you all, to see, or experiment, to see what's going on in your head. Now, I heard some really positive thoughts, and that was blowing my mind, because maybe no one wanted to say more of the monkey mind things, because that's usually what I'm hearing in my own head when I tune in. So the first thing is noticing what we're thinking. Because a lot of these loops are unconscious. And if we don't know what's even being played up there, how can we do anything about them? It's just kind of hidden information that's leading our entire lives. So detect is the first one. Detach is the second one. Now you hear this thought, but how can you make it just a thought? And so it's not you. It's not like, I am lazy, if that was a thought. How can I be not lazy? How can I just think, oh, that's just a thought I'm having about myself. It doesn't mean I am lazy. You know what I mean? There's a difference. So you detach from that. And I'll go into that more tomorrow, but a really simple 1-sentence way to handle that is to name the thought as, this is a negative thought. or this is a mind loop, or whatever you want to call it. And naming it, there were studies done in UCLA that when they named it, it completely changed the level of depression people were feeling. So it sounds really simple, but it's powerful. The third step is to detour, and that's to consciously move your thoughts to something else once you've found it and detected it and detached from it. Because if you just detach, it's so habitually ingrained in our brains, it'll bounce back very quickly. So you consciously choose something else to think about. And then the fourth D there is de-story. And this is so cool because where so many of our problems come from is from the stories we're telling about what's going on out in the outer world, what's going on in our head, what's going on in our emotions. And you know, if you're stuck in a traffic jam, the story you could be saying about this traffic jam is, this shouldn't be happening, I'm going to be late, that stupid driver's really slow up there, you know, whatever we say, it's the story, but that's just happening. And honestly, if we think about it, it has taken 13.8 billion years for everything to happen exactly the way it is at that moment with you in the traffic jam. So how can that be done? How can that be wrong? That's what happened. That's where life led. That's if you think of it, so cool. If you think about all your grandmothers, they had to bear all your ancestors by the exact one sperm of your grandfathers and their ancestors. For you to be in that moment, in that traffic jam, I mean, it's a miracle we are here. And so how could that traffic jam really be so awful? It's like just happening. But the story we tell about it, that can be awful. So there's ways to pull that story out and see it from a completely different view. Because what if that traffic jam is happening so you slow yourself down? What if that traffic jam is happening because if you were zooming along, you would have gotten hit by that semi-truck? What if that traffic jam is happening so you could admire the color of the leaves changing to the fall color, which you wouldn't have seen? How do we know? You know, we could change our story. So what I'd like to do, we have just a few minutes before our break, and this is a way, it's not my usual ways of de-storying, but I love this. And it's a way of seeing the world a little differently. And it feels different. It does to me anyway. And I'd like to do it with all of you. If you're comfortable standing, it will be easier to do, but you don't have to as long as your neighbor's standing, because you want to have room for your arms to stretch out on both sides. So go ahead and do that if you like. Thank you for playing with me. So, have you ever watched how people walk, what they're doing with their eyes? I observe people on the street, and they're almost, unless they're on their phone, which everyone's on their phone now, but if they aren't on their phone, they're usually like this. Their heads are down. I'm like, what's going on with the heads down? And why, when my head's down, what am I doing? I'm not present. When my head is down, when people's heads are down, they're lost in their heads. They're lost in the future. They're lost in the past. Well, what would happen if we changed some of that? If we started being more in the present and seeing life a little differently? So I'd like to do a before and after feeling for you. So go ahead and look down like you're walking. And imagine you are in a cab right now, and you are on your way to the airport, and you miscalculated the time you had to be at the airport. And now you're going to just barely, if make it. And there starts looking like traffic up ahead. feel how you feel in your body and notice what thoughts start coming up into your head. And I won't have you stay there long. Okay, now, put both your arms out and look straight ahead, but kind of wiggle your fingers and move them in or out of the frame of your peripheral vision until you can see your fingers on both sides. And you're still looking straight ahead. Now see how wide that vision is, left and right. How much you can see by just looking straight ahead. You can see this huge, wide picture. Now do the same thing vertically. One arm up, one arm down. And move your fingers in until you can see them wiggling, but you're still looking straight ahead. And look how high and how low. What a big window you can see through if you're not even moving your eyes. Okay, and put your arms down. Now, look through that huge window you just created for yourself. Now you can see this huge amount of space. And think about being in that cab and you're late for the airport and you see a traffic jam up ahead. Notice what's going on in your body. Notice what's going on in your thoughts. And I'm going to have one more piece of this, which is most of us, when we're stressed about something, all our energy goes into our stomach. So ride that energy up to your forehead, if that made any sense to you. So your whole focus is coming out of your eyes and your forehead, and you're seeing this big picture. And now keep imagining you're in that cab late. And notice how your body and your mind is. Okay, and then have a seat. Now I'd love to hear, did anyone notice a difference between those two perspectives?
That was an interesting experiment, and it was very easy for me to envision, that whole experience of being trapped in traffic.
Easy to envision an experience in traffic.
Because I'm about to take a trip next week, so I was just thinking, if I'm running late to my flight, and my whole chest started to burn. When my head was down, my whole chest started to burn.
Chest started to burn when her head was down.
And so I could feel the anxiety there in my chest. When we stood up and I focused forward, it just all went away.
When we stood up and focused forward, it went all away. Isn't that remarkable?
Yeah.
God, it blows my mind. I'm so glad you had that feeling. I'm really glad. Anyone else? Yeah.
When I was looking down, I had a lot of my commonplace thoughts like, you should have left earlier, why do you press the envelope, this is, going to be terrible.
You should have left earlier, why press the envelope, it's going to be terrible.
And then after we did the exercise, I really just didn't have any thoughts.
No thoughts after the exercise, just in the moment, peaceful, whatever. Acceptance? No thoughts.
No thoughts.
That's so cool. I love that. Thank you, Kid. Yes.
When I was looking down, I was having that same anxiety or those same thoughts that were just described.
Anxiety.
Yeah, pushing the envelope, all the things I should have done. What's going to mean if I miss the flight? But then, even when I was looking down, because I've been working really hard on turning things, around and seeing the good. I did get to a place where, if you miss the flight, you miss the flight.
Nice.
But when I was standing up and I was looking forward and had the bigger view, I got right to that more positive way of thinking about it. That if I miss the flight, whatever, I'll get the next flight.
Beautiful. So looking through the window, she went straight into a thought process. She was consciously starting when she had her eyes down, but when she looked up, it instantly went into, it's going to be okay. If she misses the flight, she misses the flight. Thank you so much. Yes?
Just two quick comments. I just recognized in you expressing, listening to the thoughts in your head, that it always is, you're an idiot, you do this every time.
You're an idiot, you do this every time.
I never say, I'm an idiot, I do this all the time. So you're always talking in third person, that somebody's talking to you, saying, you're an idiot, you do this all the time, why did you wait so long, how are you gonna fix this? It's always you, and they're never affirmations that I'm stupid, I'm an idiot, I should have left earlier. So who's the you? Who's that entity that's talking back and saying you? But then, so I had the same experience that everybody else described, that all that anxiety when you're looking down, and when I looked up again, it was really hard to go to that same place as I was when I was looking down. And when you said move that energy up to your forehead, the first thing I felt when you said go there is my stomach dropped, like I released that stress. And I could not actually move it up to my forehead.
Where did it get stuck?
My stomach released that stress. It was like it just dropped, and it wasn't even there to move up to my head, my forehead. When I consciously tried to move it up, I couldn't do it.
I love it. Okay, I'm going to do a quick paraphrase for people that couldn't hear, and that's the anxiety and the you should have and all that started happening down here. And when she looked up and let go of the stomach stress, the whole energy just dropped out. And there was nothing even to bring up into the forehead because all the anxiety had just popped out.
Exactly.
Beautiful. And I also want to say you had, what's your name?
Fran.
Fran had a beautiful observation, which is so many of these thoughts are, you do this, you're an idiot, you should have do blah, 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 rather than affirmations. Some of us, you sometimes will hear, I'm an idiot, I should have do blah, 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 but it's often some other voice saying you should have, like it's outside of us. What's up with that? One more, yes.
What's up with that? There's some theories of internalized ego state, and that's judgment here, so it's crystallization, indoctrinated messages that were directed into the trauma.
Absolutely. Old messaging. Yep, those are where these mind loops come from. Yeah, there's amazing study. One last thing, I just want to say, an amazing study done through University of Iowa, where they had grad students going into households in this farm community with these little clickers. I don't know if they're actual clickers, but they clicked or counted every time a parent said something negative to a child. And it could have been something small like, why didn't you do your homework again? I mean, it's not horrible, but it's still. And then they clicked also for all the positive comments. And I don't remember the exact numbers, but it was something like 267 negative to 34 positive. And we wonder why we say these things to ourselves. They're ingrained in there. So we're going to take a break, and I know Diane would like to talk. But if any of you want to share any of your experiences, that's called wide-angle vision, by the way, that we did. And by the way, try walking around during our break in wide-angle vision. And eating your food in wide-angle vision. It's really cool. Thank you so much. Hi again. Hi. So, first of all, I just want to say I had really fun meeting people during that break, and thank you for people who are interacting. It makes it more fun for me, too. So I realized we only got through the first 4 steps of the de-looping method. We're going to go through a few more real quick, and then I'll go on to the second and third gift that I got from my near-death experience. So the whole next phase of the de-looping method is about your emotions. So who here has been triggered before?
How about
And triggers are weird, right? I mean, someone says something and then bam, we have this instant response and like we're suddenly slamming doors and throwing potatoes on them and you know, who knows what we're doing. Drinking 10 margaritas, whatever, to deal with this trigger. So the whole, that phase has 2 steps. The first one is deciphering what we're feeling, because so many of us don't know what we're feeling. I went through years of my life where someone said, how are you feeling? And I'd say, weird. You know, I was like, how's that for accuracy? And finally a therapist said, well, what does weird mean? And I was like, oh my God, no one's ever asked me that before. I don't know. I was like, if you ever look online, there are tables of emotions. Like it could say anger, and then there's like bitter, and irritation, and annoyance, and rage, and all these versions of anger. So to understand how we're feeling helps us understand what thoughts we're thinking, what actions we're going to be doing, what triggers are happening. It's very important. But the 6th D, the 6th step, is one of my very favorites of this system. And it's about dissolving the negative thoughts that are being stored, negative emotions that are being stored in our bodies from years and years ago. And those are the things that are getting triggered when we get triggered. And I'll go, again, I don't know if that made any sense, but we go into detail of that in the workshop, and we do an exercise to help loosen those things and let them go. I will tell you there's a neuroanatomist named Jill Bolte-Taylor. You may have heard, some of her heard mm-hms. And she says that emotions, if we allow them to actually be felt in the body, they can go through the body in 90 seconds. And we hold on to these things for 2 decades. Right? Someone says something to you like 2 decades ago, and if their name is brought up, you're like, ah! You know? So we're holding on to that. And so there's gentle, easy ways of letting that stuff go. It's kind of like the steam of a pot. You know, you just lift the lid a little bit rather than waiting for the whole pot to explode. So that's one of my favorites. It's very impactful in my own life. And yeah.
Just ironically, I thought earlier you sound just like Jill Bolte-Taylor when you speak. There's a lot of, I
Really?
hear a lot of her in your voice. Yeah.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Yeah.
Fran says, my voice sounds similar to Jill Bolte-Tailor's.
So
That's
listen
so
to the
interesting.
video, it's amazing.
I love that, thank you. That's an honor to have legislators. Okay, the 3rd phase of the de-looping method is reprogramming. And this is a lovely one. This is the fun stuff. The 3 steps are dream. Who do you want to be? What kind of identity do you want to have? What kind of things do you want to do in your life? Then deciding on some that are very important to you, that really feel good, make you feel alive and have your heart open. And then do. So it's dream, decide, and do. And actually putting them into action. So that's the de-looping method. Clearing out the thoughts, clearing out the emotions, and then reloading the whole system. Like, what kind of life do we want? So now, that was the first gift of my near-death experience based on the life review, all those movies I was given about my life. The second gift I got is about relationships and the heart. Because you remember when I said I could stay or go, asked, do you want to stay or go, that voice during my life review. And I said, well, if I go back, first of all, let me tell you a question I asked, because it's so funny to me now. It brings so much humility to me. And at the time I was like, oh my God, but now I think it's hilarious. And that is, I said, well, you know, I'm kind of interested in going away, dying fully. But what about, you know, I was a musician at the time, what about my half-done albums? What about, you know, the writing I have? Like, you know, I have these projects, you know, don't they need to be finished? Well, And the voice said, oh, Barbara, they aren't important. And I was like, what do you mean they're not important? You know what I mean? The ego. And it said, what is important, the most important thing, are your relationships. And how do you show up for other people? What do you leave behind when you leave a room? You know, I always get this picture in my head of, you know, the Peanuts cartoon. And there's that Pig Pen character. And he's always walking around with all this detritus flying off him. There's like dust and debris. And, you know, emotionally, and as human beings, we can walk into a room leaving a bunch of crap behind us, right? We're complaining, we're negative, we're yelling at people, we're judging, we're resenting, criticizing, we're doing all this crud, and we leave the room, and everyone there's just like, oh my God, what bomb just came off in this room? You know, this is a horrible feeling. Or with our children, or our parents, or our spouse, or anybody, our employees. How do we treat people? And how are we going to, do we give a smile or do we give a sneer? You know? A lot of what I was told was about how do I show up? Am I showing up with an open heart, or am I going to close and be jealous and resentful and bitter? Obviously, we can't be 100%, at least, I don't know, humans are humans. But there's ways to be more human, in a good sense, right? So it was about that. And now the voice said, when you go back, and when I made that decision, within this week, I mentioned, I want you to go talk to these 4 people. And very impactful people in my life, mostly family members and one other person. And I want you to tell them, this one person, I want you to tell them how much you love them. And it was my mom. My mom knows I love her. I've been telling her for years, she tells me she loves me. But this voice was like, no, she knows it. But what I want you to do is think, what has she meant to you to have her in your life? What qualities about her do you love? How has she impacted you? As your mother, what has she shown you that you don't know if other mothers have gotten? You know, when has she been there for you when you really needed her the most? Like, you think deeply. What is your love about? That's what I want you to convey to her. I was like, okay, got it. Another one was an apology I needed to make, an amends. Another one was a combination, apology and love. And the third one was a gratitude to someone who, again, all these people, they know I'm grateful, they know I love them, but to really go and tell them from my heart how grateful I was for something they had done for me. And so I said, got it, I'll do it. So now remember, when I came back into this earth, I was like so happy. I was so present. I was just like, my heart was pure open. So I'm calling up these people, and I made appointments. Said, yeah, there's something that happened to me recently. I want to talk to you. And they're like, okay. OMG. These meetings were so over the top. Okay, I'm telling them this crazy near-death experience story. I'm crying with love and gratitude, or whatever the feelings were. And they're just, every one of them were like this, they couldn't even look at me. I love you too. Okay, honey. Because it's so intense. Like, since when did we go around doing that? Which is a sad statement. When do we go up to someone and have eye contact and say, I love you so much, and this is why you mean so much to me. You know what I mean? So that was an amazing, beautiful, intense time. And the bonds that opened from that were amazing. So here's what I want to ask you. You know, we don't know when our last day will be. So is there somebody in your life that you need to tell them you love them? And I mean from that depth of who you are. Because we don't know if you'll die tomorrow, or if they'll die tomorrow. It could be 10 years, it could be in an hour. We have no idea. So why are we waiting to tell them these things? Is there someone in your life that you need to apologize for something? You've thought about it, it's just awkward, you don't really want to admit you were wrong, or whatever it was, right? Is there someone you need to apologize to? Because I know for sure that when people pass, most of us have limited communication. And I know people that are very sad that they didn't say something before that moment. And is there someone that you're grateful to? Again, I know someone who didn't say something to her father. That he did something kind to her, and it was really a big deal. And she regrets it. She thinks about it a lot. So is there somewhere about that? Also, is there someone in your life that harms your heart? Who, when you tell them your dreams, they laugh or roll their eyes. Or if you're trying to tell them about your day, they kind of like just want to ignore you like you're some mosquito. You know? Bring your energy down. Notice that, because we don't know when our last days will be. And waiting 10 years to bring that toxic person out of your life isn't good for you. So who do you need? And you know, you may need to say, I love you and I'm sorry to yourself. And I'm grateful to yourself. So that's something to think about. And I'd like to offer the idea today of, if you think of someone right now who has meant so much to you, maybe a parent or a mentor or a friend or a spouse, and if you think right now, what are the qualities about that person that you love so deeply? And would you be willing this week sometime to write a letter to them, or to call them up, or to send even a text, or call, whatever? Are you willing to do that this week? Is anyone committed to doing that? Some hands going up. Nice. Yes, I'll get right back to you. Yeah.
If the person is not living anymore.
If the person is not living anymore. If you don't have if you don't feel like you have a connection where you could tell them, first of all, you could try that. But if you don't feel like you have a connection, a cool way to do it is to write a letter exactly like you'd want to have them receive it. And then have some kind of cool ceremony with yourself. You could go to the lake here and bring some matches and say, let them know, I wrote this for you, read it out loud, and then burn it or put it in the water or something. Some way to at least do your side of the street, as they say, so that your heart feels complete. And we can, this is a group of people that is going to feel like people on the other side, a lot of them do hear what we think, what we're saying, what we're doing. A lot of people feel like they might even be in this auditorium today. But whether or not that's your belief, it's so important to get those thoughts down on a paper or in a recording or just in your own voice and speak them so that your part is done and your heart will feel that. Does that help?
It's better than nothing.
Better than nothing. What's that?
A candle.
A candle. Beautiful.
Yeah.
That would be lovely. Thank you.
Can I ask a quick? You answered my question.
Okay, perfect. Okay, perfect.
I'm sorry, when you were talking about, so you were told to go to 4 people, and then you talked about if someone hurts your heart.
Yeah.
What was the action that you?
Yeah, luckily I didn't have to do that one, but that is one just for me, because this is about relationships. And if we, we have a relationship with ourselves, and thank you for asking that to clarify, if we allow these people, these toxic people into our life, and we just keep them there, that is really harming us and the relationship we have with ourselves and how we even show up for other people, because now we're kind of messed up after being with that toxic person, right? So it's more about for ourselves. I hope that made sense. Yes?
If I could just follow up on the same thought. Coming from what you've been through with those 4 people, those were positive people that you gave positive thoughts and emotions back to. As far as the negative people though, do you think that that's the only option, is just to disconnect and get away from that negative energy? Or should there be some communication saying, you hurt me, I need you to understand how bad you hurt me? Is that necessary or just the distance?
That is a good question. Let's see if I can paraphrase it. With negative people, is the only option just to leave, or is it important to talk to them and say, you hurt me? First of all, let me clarify. One of the people, it wasn't the most positive thing. And my assignment with that person was to simply call them every week. That was it. Just because we had had a kind of a split. And in my opinion, it was something they did, who knows from their point of view. But so my assignment was just to start mending that process. And it has turned into full-blown love. But it took some time. But it was weekly calls. They're saying, hey, how you doing? Yeah, 5 minutes, whatever. Now they're calling all the time, which is a miracle. And then as to your question, I would say, no, you're right. Cutting them out is really a last step, but sometimes that's a very important step to take care of ourselves. I wouldn't go to the place of wanting to tell them what they did wrong, because that, to me, is my business. And maybe me interacting with this person was something I needed to learn. And so they actually provided my growth for me. I've recently been having really deep downloads, I guess you'd call them, of information. And part of that is finding huge, bizarre gratitude to those very people who were toxic in my life. And I have a few of them still in my life. And I've been stirred, I can't stand them, they make me so mad. And yet, suddenly I'm starting to shift my story about them and about my role in this relationship, however important or not important it is. And actually finding gratitude for them, because I'm noticing all these incredible avenues I am turning down that I never would have gone down if they didn't bug me so much. So with people that are toxic, I watch out for myself, number one now, because I didn't used to. And then I decide, how do I want to deal with it? Do I want to just remove myself from them? Or do I want to change my story about it, or see them less, or start mending? But it wouldn't be, you have done this to me, because I really believe I allow it, or I'm getting something from it, and I'm not aware of it, but I clean my side up. So, I believe, it's my belief that in any conflict, even if it looks like 99% of the problem is from that jerk, there's at least 1% that's me. And it could just mean that I'm allowing it, or I'm not speaking up when it's happening, whatever it is. So I clean up my side.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can you clarify one thing?
Mm-hmm.
Regarding toxic people, you said some of those people you called?
Yeah.
These are people, these are people who stomp all over your dreams, and you still called them once a week?
So she's asking, this toxic person that was stomping over my dreams, did I call them every week? It wasn't to that degree anymore. It's more they stomped on my dreams in the past, and I was still hanging on to it. And so our relationship wasn't good. And I wanted them to be different. I wanted them to be nicer and more supportive. But there's someone I can't just easily cut out of my life, let's just put it that way. Wasn't like a friend or ex-friend. So it was important to me to clean that up. I felt like we were karmically or whatever put onto this earth together to figure some stuff out. So it was important to me to clean it up. But I could have easily just said, whatever, you go your way, I'll go mine. In the back, yes.
I was just wondering, do you think maybe you're living in New York City? Because I've been spending a lot of time there. It's a very stressful place to go, and you went there in a very competitive, business, entertainment, even people from New York City have to leave New York City and go to other places like Chicago, get a start here, and then maybe, they're welcome back. Same thing in the finance world, on the stock market. And then I just think about some of the things that you said, and maybe part of it is, it's like your generation too. It's like you're always on, and it's on the iPhone, and the Instagram, and you're looking down like this, because I myself, the only time I am looking down is if it's a bad street area. I'm scanning everything, especially in Chicagoland, because with crime.
I'm gonna have to cut in for time and say, is there a question? Or okay.
Yeah. Do you think, your environment in New York City, stressed you to the point that you needed to do the special program?
So the question is, being in New York City, did that stress me to the point of needing to do the camp that I went to? Well, I wasn't living in New York at the time. I was just touring through there. But I have lived in New York for 5 years, and it is stressful. You're right. And so I don't know if that totally relates, because where I live now is Seattle, and it's not as stressful as New York. So I'm not really sure. Yeah, sorry. I think we should move on, but we'll have Q&A after, and we can go more into that. Okay. Let's see, so I wanted to do any things before we moved on. Oh yes, I knew there was a little thing I wanted to do. So the third gift that I got is about priorities, life priorities. And to illustrate this, I'd like to do a meditation with you. This is not going to be the most pleasant meditation you've ever done, but I will guarantee that it is worth it, okay? And it won't be long. So go ahead and close your eyes when you're all set there. And I'd like you to imagine it's January in Chicago. It's dark at about 5:30. 4:30. But it's around the time when people are going home from work, and it's a Friday and everyone wants to get home now. It's dark and it's raining and it's cold. And you're driving home on a street that you're going a little bit faster than normal, and everyone else is too, because everyone wants to get home. And you're just hanging out, thinking about your week, thinking about your weekend. Maybe you have the news playing, whatever. and all of a sudden the car in front of you stops really, really quickly. And you hit the brakes and you are 1 foot from their bumper, but you're okay. You're like, oh, thank God. So you slid a little bit in the rain. And then you look up in the rearview mirror, and there behind you is a huge black SUV barreling down on you. And it's not slowing yet. Now we cut to the next scene in your mind. You're now in the hospital. And you open your eyes and you're, oh, there's those lights blinking. Oh my God, I'm in a hospital. I got hit. And there's some part of your consciousness that understands you have a couple minutes to live. And that's it. It's your time. And you think a little bit about your life and all the things you've experienced. And then you say, oh, but if only I had done blank before this moment. Only I had written that book, asked that person out for a date, not worked so hard, loved myself more, changed jobs, gone on that trip to the Galapagos Islands. What would be in your blank? When you're ready, you can open your eyes. It's a pretty intense meditation. I will tell you that last January, a lot of that experience happened to me. Up to the moment where that SUV was barreling down on me, and literally the thought that went in my head was, oh my God, I'm going to experience an airbag. It was like, this is going to happen. Wow. And at the very last second, he swerved off into the middle changing lane. And he didn't stop for 2 cars ahead. That's how fast he was going. And he was like, sliding all over the place. And I went into this state of kind of that weird calm shock that you get. Clear and calm. It's like, oh. And I drove home kind of normal. And when I got home, it hit me how close I had been to being pancaked. Dead, brain dead, paralyzed, who knows what would have happened with that huge SUV. And it dawned on me, you know, I asked myself after having a near-death experience, and the work I do, I ask myself a couple times a year, is there something I'm going to regret? What do I need to put into place? But that night, boy, did that feel visceral. That question was meaningful. And I asked myself, and I specifically asked about different areas of my life, but the one about my work, because again, I have books and courses and workshops and things all half done. Which one of all those things would I have regretted the most not leaving behind? And I got this very interesting image of all these anonymous heads, and they were each one representative of different projects I have going on. And they're all kind of waiting to be born. And I said, well, which one of you? And there was one way in the back. And he was jumping up and down, waving his arms. I'm like, you? And it's a course called Blueprint for Magic. And I don't know if you saw the flyers out there, but the moment I understood that was what wanted to come through, I put everything aside and I worked on it every day since January. It's going to be a whole year before this thing is actually complete. It's taken me that whole 9 months to come up with the whole program and write the scripts. And I'm shooting it right now. It'll be out in January or February. And the reason it was so surprising to me is because it's about conscious creating, which is also known as manifesting. And I was like, I didn't know I was going to be doing work in that area, because I'm doing this mind loops work. But years you know, even before my near-death experience, I had gotten one of those downloads of a way of conscious creating. And from that, I got a house and offices, a couple boyfriends, and you know, all sorts of beautiful things from that. And you know, I've shared it with friends and a few clients, but I didn't think I was going to be using this as my next thing to leave. But it was super clear, and it's one of my most favorite, cherished things I've ever created. I love this thing. It goes so far beyond manifesting. It's about expansion and clarity and negative thoughts and all this stuff. And if it weren't for that question, I don't know if it ever would have been made. And so it's an incredibly important question to ask ourselves. Yes?
When you ask that question, are you in meditation, or how are you experiencing the clarity of your insights?
The question is, when I'm asking that question myself, am I in meditation, or how am I experiencing the clarity of my insights? Literally perfect. I personally don't go into meditation every time I've asked that, because I ask it enough that I'm pretty in tune with what I feel is important. But it was interesting, this one felt more, the response was more like a meditation because I had that image. But I think if we start asking that question more often of ourselves, we get more in tune with what it is we actually want in our lives. Because there's research that says 1 in 100 people know what they want. And I thought I knew what I want, you know, for years, until someone started asking me about certain things. I was like, I don't know. It's like, but the more we ask ourselves, what do I want for my life? We start getting more and more clear about it. So whatever way works, I guess, is my answer. So I would love to hear if anyone wants to share. And before we go, I want to say, if anyone feels called to the Blueprint for Magic course, I am so juiced about it. And if anyone feels called, I would be overjoyed to have you in the course. And the tuition is lower this weekend. There's flyers out there. But I would really love to hear if anyone wants to share what came through for them when they did the meditation. Is anyone interested? Yes.
Live life fully.
Live life fully. That is such a beautiful message, always. Thank you for that. Do you have an idea of one way you could put that into action?
I think it's by some of the actions that you've been saying, you know, telling the people that I love them, not being afraid to come from the heart, apologize, being more in tightness with myself.
Love that.
And what I did also want to ask you is, like, how do you become more proactive so that you don't have a SUV coming at you, or you don't go to a camp and experience these experiences?
How do you be more proactive and to not have these negative things happen?
Do not feel the regrets.
No. For example, you know, you had beautiful outcomes from both experiences, but something negative had to have happened. You had to almost have died, or you had to have had that SUV in your rearview mirror and go home, and it's like, oh my gosh. So, you know, these come when something negative is about to happen. So how do you become more proactive in having or connecting to these thoughts that are the aftermath of these experiences?
It's such a good question, and I'm going to paraphrase. How do we get the clarity and the gifts maybe from that come from these negative experiences, like the SUV barreling down or the camp I went to, without having to go through situations where SUVs are barreling and the camps almost kill you? And I actually have an answer for you, because I asked that same thing just a week ago. I've been going through a very intense time. the last few months, I've been talking to other people, and it sounds like people are going through hard times. And mine's finally clearing up, but it was hard. And I finally got fed up, and I said, I'm like, you know, how come I have to go through these intense things? Because I kept getting these downloads while they were going on, like the deep, intense information about consciousness that was coming through to me, but that doesn't normally come through. But it was coming because I was so messed up, basically. And I'm like, can't I have these downloads without the mess up part? And the answer I got was, Barbara, when you quit doing so much and you start being more, you will get them. You won't have to go through this hard stuff. And I was like, yeah, I know that lesson. I forgot it again. You know what I mean? Ah. And it's true, the last 2 months when all these hard things were going on, I was just go, 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 and deadlines and stress and not feeling very happy. You know, it was just too much do. And we are not human doers. We are human beings. And so where is the being these days? I mean, we race in this life. And so I committed to way more meditation. I was still meditating every day, but now I meditate like 3 times a day. And I put all my deadlines like months in advance. I was going to release Blueprint for Magic this month, like some crazy person that's not ready. So now it's January or February. I mean, that's how life just starts becoming more alive. That's when we can feel more alive. We're more present to be in this experience. And time expands. It gets so beautiful. So thank you for all that. Anyone else want to share what they got? Yes.
Okay, I got something that is along the lines of what you just said. Is I had a career for like 20 years, maybe even longer than 20 years, where it took so much out of me. I don't think I was 100% cut out for it, but I was into it. I was working, doing everything I had to do to hold on to the job, always worried that I had to do enough so that I wasn't going to get fired because it was a sales job. And you know what? It took everything away from the rest of my life. It took everything out of me. I couldn't even go out unless I came home and slept for an hour, and then I had to get up and take a shower. I couldn't go out till 8:30 on Saturday because I worked on Saturday. I had to come home. I had to rest.
Yes.
I mean, it just took everything out of me. So that was my big regret, that I was laying there. I was like, God, I wish I would have had a different career.
Wow, that is so huge. Now I'm going to paraphrase in one sentence that huge long thing you just said, which was a 20-year career in a job that was very, very stressful and exhausting. And so what came through for her was, I regret I hadn't changed jobs and gone to a job I had loved. Yeah, that's a giant one. Is there any regret that you could say now that you can still change?
Well, I'm not doing that anymore.
Not doing that anymore, right on, sister. Yeah, beautiful. So you're enjoying your life more?
Well, I got hit by a car a few years ago. I stopped working. So it wasn't like I planned that to happen, but I really do think I got hit by the car because I think the job was killing me. And I think if I didn't get hit by the car, probably my health would have went down and I probably would have had a stroke or a heart attack.
Yes, I don't know if you all heard that, but she was hit by a car a few years ago and that forced her to quit the job, right? And so if she had stayed in the job, she might have had a stroke or a heart attack, she believes. And so now, she, saved by the car wreck. That's weird. Sometimes, so often, those bad things that happen turn out to be the best gifts ever. Isn't that fascinating? Yes.
I have to comment because I went through something very, very similar. For 22 years, I was in the same line of work, stressful, it was killing me. And there were signs along the way telling me, get out of this, get out of this, get out of this. Around the 22-year mark, I was involved in a car accident, broke my neck, both shoulders, and messed up my lower back. Now I had to leave the job. So if I would have followed my gut and the messages I was getting a lot earlier and took on something else, I believe that it probably wouldn't come down to that, but it's like you get these messages and you get these nudges trying to point you in the right direction.
Yes.
And if you don't do it at some point, it's just going to smack you in the back of the head. Like, Now you gotta do it.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Was it, and for people that couldn't hear, it's a similar story of a job that was very stressful in a car wreck that forced him out of the job. And what I love about what you said is that he was getting nudges to leave this job and ignoring them, or whatever we do with those nudges if we don't want to hear them at the time, and continuing until life forces the change to happen. So that's, again, an example of we're doing instead of being, and if we be more, we can hear the nudges and start following them. I call them breadcrumbs, and man, I will tell you, when I follow the breadcrumbs, I am in the flow. Everything, all the doors open, I'm like, how did this happen? It's beautiful. And then I put some block in there, and I was like, oh, I get out of the flow. I don't notice the breadcrumb. I do instead of be. Don't notice them. We do the best we can. We keep changing, whatever. But yeah, I agree with you. Those nudges, those breadcrumbs, the intuition, the hints we get when we start getting really clear on those things and follow them, life just takes off. One more question, yeah. Or a comment.
It's a comment along those lines, essentially, Mark, on what you said.
Okay.
It's follow your intuition if it guides you. Don't ignore it. The one time I ignored it, it almost killed me.
Yeah.
Critical care nurse, big university hospital, you had to perform. I went to work between Christmas and the New Year holiday. I had a syncope episode, and I almost died there at work. I had to be resuscitated in a children's hospital intensive care and taken to Northwestern. A month prior to this, I would go into work in the locker room where this happened, by the way, and something kept on saying, something bad is going to happen to you. Now, this was during the time of, high terrorist work, and I thought maybe Chicago was going to be hit. No, it was something I never expected.
Yeah, I love it. The message, what your message comes down to is follow your intuition, full on. And it's quiet. It's a quiet voice. I have one friend that says, my intuition yells at me. I'm like, you sure it's your intuition? It's really gentle usually. It's really quiet. But thank you. That's beautiful. So, let's see, I think. Just want to make sure I cover everything here. Yes. The thing I just want to end with, the thing about this third gift about priorities, when you think about life and death, we all know we're going to die. We just don't know when. Which is an odd thing. They say that humans are the only animal that knows they're going to die. I don't know if that's true or not, but either way, it's a real double-edged sword. Because on the one side, it's like, oh my God, it's just the most horrific thought, I'm going to die. It's just, how can that be? It's horrible. And the other one is, well, if I know that, what different choices might I make? I once was dating this fellow who, he was fully sure he wanted to live forever and get one, they're talking about putting chips in the brain that we're actually working on, people living forever. And we get into these very interesting debates. I was like, I don't want to live forever. And he's like, how could you not? And I'm like, how could you? And I understand why someone wants to live forever. I mean, that's kind of the fountain of youth and all that thing. But the truth is, if I live forever, then who the heck cares who I marry now? I'll just have 10 more, 1,000 more. I mean, it's forever. Who the hell cares, excuse me, what career I would do? And why would I even need to, or feel like I need to come and talk to you guys today? Who cares? I'm living forever. But no, these things are really, really important to me. And I think death is such an, we have an intellectual understanding of it, but it's abstract, it's surreal, it doesn't make any sense to our human minds from a visceral level. And after having a near-death experience, I really get it. Although, I have to say, the more time that goes by, it starts getting more and more abstract again. But I really get it. I'm not going to be here one day, and I think it's very strange. You know what I mean? But it does allow me to come up with priorities about my life. So one of the things I personally like to do is a bucket list trip every year. I choose one place. So I went to Machu Picchu 2 years ago. I went to the bottom of the Grand Canyon and back up one year. This March I went to the Galapagos Islands. Next year I have things planned. I haven't set them in stone. But it makes me so happy because one thing I understand really strongly is that what counts to me now are the memories I'm taking with me. Because that's all I'm going to get. On that moment when I'm on my deathbed, I'll have memories. And what kind of memories do I want to have? I want to have ones of the most juicy life I could have possibly had. And so I want to ask you all today, is there something you're willing to commit to doing this week to either, from one of the 3 gifts that I talked about, to either clean out some of your thoughts or negative emotions or unwanted emotions, or to open your heart more and help with your relationships or improve or enhance your relationship? Or is there something that you could do this week to set in place a way to help you feel really alive while you're here? Like my friend over there said. Is there a trip that you want to start setting up? Is you want to maybe look online for different jobs. Just look. I mean, a tiny little step of something that would bring more joy to your life. So that's what I have for you today. And I think we have time for questions, but thank you so much for coming. Are there any questions before we head out? I know we've had some. Yes?
I don't know, it's not. And I think my earlier life, I did a lot of different things. I had a lot of different careers. I traveled and it was very exciting, very busy. Now, I was content doing nothing.
I love it.
I feel better. Is that?
Yes. Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you. Actually, it's very important. What's your name?
Julie.
Julie said for years she's been traveling and doing all these things that, like I just mentioned, on my bucket list trips or whatever, I'm guessing. And now she likes to just hang out, basically, right? And is that okay, quote unquote? Yes, that's giant. It can be the tiniest thing, whatever makes you feel the most alive. I love that. I remember my grandma, I would visit her, and she loved baking cookies and watching the birds. And I was like, really? Like, that's fun. You know, I'd be a teenager, you're like, go, go, go. But now, as I age too, I love being more. I love being and doing kind of equally. But I think as I get older and older, I love being more. It's juicy. It's super cool. I love that. So thank you so much for that. It doesn't have to be some grand thing that we do to feel alive. Beautiful. Yes.
And maybe really, because I'm still semi-working and stuff, but doing a lot. But still, experiencing some of that, and some of that is not, it's integrated.
Is what?
It's integrated all that went before, and exponentially.
Explain, she's saying that it's integrating.
Integrating all of the different things before and for a complete tapestry.
You're actively integrating what you've already been through.
Right, and then
beautiful.
New things are coming from it exponentially.
Yes. Yes, when I talked to my dad on the phone, he's this cool artist that lives in the desert, you know. Intellectual artist guy. And he's 80 now. And when I called him, I said, what have you been doing this week? He's like, same thing I do every week. I just hang out in my chair, drink my coffee, and I think about all these cool things I did in my life. And that's all he does. He listens to music and just replays what's happened in his life over and over. And the memories that he's coming up with of these things we've done together, things he's done with friends, I just love hearing. I'm hearing way more about his childhood than I ever heard growing up. And I'm learning about my dad because he's bringing it, and that's beautiful. So excellent. Integrating what we've been through is a great thing to do. I love it. Anyone else? Yes.
Just on the same note as what you were just saying, my dad used to call that, what are you doing, Papa? You know, he'd lie in bed till like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And he was like 98 when he died. Yeah, but he would just say, making memories.
Her Poppy
You know,
says
just
he's making memories. I
going
love
on
it.
and going on.
Beautiful. I love that. Any other questions or comments? Yes.
Just something that I thought of earlier when you were talking about, I don't know if you said trauma or bad things that happened earlier in life, that within 60 seconds, 90 seconds, it's done, it's over with, it's out. Yet we live for that with decades, and when I thought about that, in that instant, it's done and it's over with, but really what we're doing is we're giving our memories of that instance the same weight emotionally that it had in that instant. And maybe if we just realize we're only having a memory, we're not reliving it, you could kind of lessen it.
That is so huge. So John was saying, thinking about past memories and giving them as much potency as our current moment. And if they're bad memories, that's not a good place where we want to go. And I agree, that's been another piece of these downloads that have been coming over the past couple months, is about what actually is thought. What is this weird thing called thought? And I'm having all sorts of interesting ideas that are kind of blowing my mind. But I'm starting to wonder if they're arbitrary half the time. Because the reality is, this is the only, we all know, this moment that we have that just left, by the way. now we have another one. That's all we really have. So these thoughts that come into our heads, like the first exercise we did, all these random things and all these you should-haves and all these bad memories, they're kind of arbitrary in some ways. I could look at them that way anyway. The impact they have on me is, in my belief anyway, is because of the emotions that I'm storing about them and the stories I'm talking about them. And the more I release those things, the more kind of more arbitrary they seem to me. It's a half-baked piece of information right now, but I love that you said that because it's true. It's gone. So unless we want to conjure up positive memories that make us feel good, why go through all that? Why go into that turmoil again? It's fascinating that humans do that. Why would we want to relive it? It blows my mind. And part of that is the neural pathways. And that's why I want to dilute these things. I don't want to keep thinking of them. How about one more? Yes.
I'm really fascinated when you said these downloads, because I kind of understand. But like, does it happen? Like, when does it happen for you? Is there a specific time, or is it during meditation, or is it just whenever? And is there any way that we might be able to do that for ourselves, like find ways to get more downloads? Because they seem cool, you know.
Yes. How do we get the downloads?
Just the download.
Yeah. Oh, if I had a real.
Is it because of your experience?
Is it because of my experience? The only thing I can relate to it maybe being to my experience is a few shifts that I noticed after my near-death experience. One is every once in a while, a person who has passed on will tell me something to tell someone who's living, and this happened twice, and was with people I hardly knew. It was really bizarre, and I was like, I don't want to can't do that. It's like, I don't know what their beliefs are. And it's worked out beautifully. So that's happened. Another thing that's happened is the communication I have with, I don't want to give it a name, but whatever is wise that's coming through me, or guides. That, I've had that throughout my life since I was a little girl, but it's been very more intuition-based and more abstract, whereas now it's super clear. I get dialogue and actual words and concepts and things I can write down. And so I think that probably is from the near-death experience. But I do believe that the more we meditate and de-loop and whatever you can do to clear out the clutter going on, then we can hear better. You know, it's like they say you can only have one thought at a time. So do we want it to be like, oh, I'm an idiot thought? Or do I want to clear that out so I can hear something much more deep and interesting? So meditation and just asking. I'd love to get some downloads, please. You know what I mean? Why not ask? Yeah. Now, I don't know if we should be wrapping up or if we're allowed to have more questions.
You have 25 minutes.
Oh, okay. So if anyone needs to go, cool. But if anyone wants to stick around, I'm here. So, yes.
Oh, I was thinking 5 o'clock.
Oh, 5. Okay. and yes.
It's like we have people who have post-traumatic stress disorder. And, you know, I've done a lot of training in various, medical issues. Nobody has really been able to treat that successfully in the sense, you have a lot of people who come back from the military in combat situations where they're not able to get over it, and when they go into their car, they think they're back in Iraq, and all of a sudden, they think the car is around them.
I know. PTSD is heavy duty. I don't claim to know a thing about PTSD. I'm not even going to go there or any kind of clinical thing.
I think it would be great if you worked on it because, nobody's,
Well, I'm sure this de-looping method would really, really help. But there's a lot of technologies like that help. That's so deep. I'm not sure. I'm just going to leave that one aside. But thank you. Yes.
I have 2 questions. One kind of maybe focuses that a little more distinctly to what you've already done, which is, even talking about what you might share further tomorrow, the dissolving negative emotions in the body.
Yes.
So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes, so the dissolving negative emotions in the body, I think you're right. I think that would be a good technique. I'm not a psychologist, so I try to steer clear of anything that has labels on it. But yeah, the dissolving of the emotions, when we have, let's say, when we have any difficult thing that have happened to us in our lives, it gets stored in our body as an emotion. I call them energy packets. And emotion is just energy in a certain form. And if I'm feeling anger and I can't release it in some way, and I push it down like good girls aren't supposed to get mad, so I push it down, I'm okay, I'm all right, That is not gone. It's not like out of sight, out of body. It is still in here somewhere. And so what I do with the dissolving of the emotions is tune into where in my body are these things being stored. So I don't know if you've ever had a massage where someone massages on you and you're suddenly, wah! You're like, where did that come from? It's like they touched on an energy packet, for lack of a better word, that opened up this emotion that's stuck in there. And these things need to come out. They are clogging our whole worldview. They're clogging our reality in such an intense way, just like our negative thoughts are doing. But they're very kind of hidden, even more than the thoughts, unless you notice your triggers. So it's about getting real calm and quiet with the feelings in the body and whatever is rising up. And not going down the road of the story that created it. So if I was angry and I felt this energy of anger coming up from something that happened, 15 years ago, instead of going into the whole story about how come that jerk did this to me and why they oughta and all the other things, instead I stay with the feeling in the body. It's a sensation. And when I change it from the story to a sensation that's been stored and allow it to just be, to exist, to have it say, to come up, it's, number one, it's not scary. And I mean, at least for me, it's never scared me the way I thought it was going to scare me. I thought it was going to be terrifying to feel that thing. It feels like energy. And I yawn or sometimes I burp. It's coming up. It has to come out. And sometimes people's legs move. They start shaking because the energy is coming out. And you can feel this amazing, like I can breathe again. I feel lighter. And I will say that I do this now ever since that whatever information came that said I should be more instead of do more. Every day now, one of my meditations is simply to allow that stuff out, to dissolve, to dissolve, to dissolve the crud in there. And I tell you, it doesn't matter what I feel like when I first sit down to meditate. When I get up, I'm like, oh my God, I actually feel pretty good. Even if I'm feeling stressed. It's releasing it. It's remarkable to me how much our poor bodies are storing this crud. And I think a lot of illnesses come from these areas that are holding on to this stuff. That's just my personal belief. So when I release it, my body feels better. Everything about me feels better.
So will you be guiding that tomorrow?
Yes, I'll be guiding that tomorrow. And it's not even a big, long thing. It can be really fast once you know just these few. It's not a big deal. And you can do it at home. Hold on one sec. Yep.
It seems that our whole life is we're subjects of programming. Our parents have programmed us, our religion has programmed us, our education has programmed us, and we might have to be victims of the political system to go to war, and come out with maimed bodies, or we die, or and so it's a constant challenge and battle all our lives, and it's just one aspect because it's the journey of the soul. So people don't understand that there's a vast array of dimensions out there. This is just a small droplet, and so we have to experience these things. And some people find it easy based on the past, and it's a constant struggle in who you meet, resolving relationships from the past, and so you have to become very attuned and understand what this life so-called is, because life is nothing until the soul inhabits the body, and then this protoplasm becomes activated. That's what it is, So there's no such thing as living forever, because this is an illusion. It's just an impression of who we are and who we think we are, and what we think the world is, because we only have impressions of what is out there, and there's nothing out there. It's only we.
Yes.
We are the only, and it's all part of God's plan. God is the only reality.
Okay, this was wise and beautiful, and I'm sorry I can't even begin to paraphrase it. Thank you so much. You have a couple more time? Yes. Oh, yes, sorry.
Can you tell us a little bit more about
Birdie that you said that was waving his hand about manifestation?
Oh, yeah, about the blueprint for magic?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, as you can tell, I'm really excited about it. So it's an online course, and it goes through a huge piece about clarity, which is kind of what we were talking about as far as the last gift. What do we want in life? And like I mentioned before, how I thought I knew. I thought it was like, oh yeah, I'm one of those 1 in 100 people that knows what they want. And then my friend came up to me and said, this was when I was starting my music career, and she said, oh, that's great, you want to do music, so who do you want in your band? I was like, well, I know so-and-so, and I don't know. And she said, well, do you want to tour? I don't know. What, are you going to play any cover songs? I don't know. It's like, I did not know the answer to anything. It's so interesting that we think we know what we want because we know the broad thing. I want love. I want a career I love. I want to play music or whatever it is. But when we are asked the specifics, it gets very muddy. So a lot of the course goes into clarity. And then another piece is about, we'll have a dream for something, but there's a part of us that says, yeah, that's a good dream. It's not possible. So there's work that we do about opening up the feeling of making the impossible possible. As long as as long as it's not someone who wants to climb Mount Everest and gets out of breath in one block, that's kind of a little over the top, or flying. So we open that up. So it's like some people who have wanted relationships for so long but feel all the good guys or girls are gone, or I'm too old, and they go through all these things in their head that make it impossible for them. So we start opening up to possibility. Then we help them remove a major block that could be stopping that thing from coming into their lives. And there's a lot of different major blocks, I'm not worthy of it, or fears that this could happen, or we're getting benefits from not having it. So we go through some of that. And then the actual blueprint, which is the thing that was downloaded for me, which is a way of almost writing out your request to the universe, or to your subconscious, however you're looking at it, in a really profound, deep, clear way. And then what to do after you've put the request out, which is some of my favorite things, one of which was the breadcrumbs we talked about, starting to watch for those things and not blowing them off. When we get a breadcrumb, we act on it. Otherwise, those breadcrumbs start kind of getting, fading away. The more we can respond to when things are happening for us, and just accept them and go, okay, I'm going to do this scary thing, but it was the door open, I got to walk through it if I really want this thing I said I wanted. So it's following the breadcrumbs and expanding into more of the person that we need to be in order to have this dream. So for instance, if someone comes to me and says, I really want to earn a good living finally, and I've never earned a good living, well, what kind of person does that person have to be to earn a good living? Like, do you think they have to clear out some of their beliefs about wealthy people, for instance? Or do they have to understand how to balance their checkbook for the first time? Start being someone who's more clean with the whole concept of money. So we can expand into someone who can actually accept this thing that we're asking of. That's why I'm excited.
Thank you.
Yes.
So if you take this course, okay, saying that it's online, so it's totally online, it's like reading a book and doing exercises, or?
It's online, but it's me talking in a video. So I get to hang out with you kind of. One way I know. So it's online that way, and with these beautifully designed worksheets that cover everything that we talked about in that session. And then there'll be a private community online group where I'll go in and talk with people and answer questions, and other people that are going through it will be on it too, so we can kind of go through it all together.
So it's like you're typing the questions then?
Yes, exactly, yeah. Yes.
Hi, one of the many things that have touched me about your talk this afternoon is the concept of amends, making amends.
Of what?
Making amends.
Yes,
And,
making amends.
I recently went through a series where I made amends to several people. And I got, the feedback was positive, but I was prepared, that not everyone's going to be receptive to this. Fortunately, that didn't happen. What I did, and this is kind of years of culminating how to do this, is acknowledging what I did, acknowledging the effect of what I did, giving an explanation, not an excuse, is a huge difference. Here's where I was at when this happened. So this is not your fault. And then here's what I'm doing to repair my behavior. And I thought just putting it, looking at it on the screen was freeing.
Yes.
And regardless of the outcome, because I could say, no, here's what I'm doing. Here's the work that I'm doing to fix this. So whether or not that person that received it or not, I was okay with it, And I thought two things that came to mind in that process was, one, I wanted to give people what I had never got, from my family of origin, was an honest apology. And two, what a wonderful world this would be if everybody did this. We would be in a different planet, completely different planet. So
completely different planet.
So thank you for acknowledging that piece as part of your process, because it's really powerful.
It is, and thank you so much for sharing that. And this fellow, I don't know if you're willing to talk with other people, but if anyone needs to make an amends, you have it down. I mean, those steps are very important. An explanation, not an excuse of why we did that, is huge. And being prepared for whatever kind of response, we can't expect that person to go, oh, I'm so glad you told me sorry finally. And an amends is different than sorry in some ways. So yeah, that's powerful. And then we feel clean, right?
Yeah.
No matter how they accept it.
Right.
We can't know.
As long as you're doing that final step in repairing your behavior and improving yourself, that's the key. That it's not complete without that.
I don't know if you heard that, but it's so important. He said, as long as you do that last step, which is changing our own behavior, and which is giant, and which means we can do amends for people who have passed on by changing, or we can do amends by not even actually having to talk to them if it's going to harm them more. Right. By changing our behavior, not repeating those same behaviors that have harmed others. That is beautiful, my friend. Thank you. Anyone else?
Oh, yes. How much of this, it just seems to bring a lot of information. How much of this was from the downloads you got, or from your, let's say, your life training? Like courses, or education, or family life?
I don't even know how to put percentages on that. They're all mixed together. I don't know. And a lot of the downloads come as I might be taking a course or reading a book. And then I will tell you this, and I hesitate because people think it's really weird. But hey, yay, I get to be weird. So I went through a phase, and I still do this when I'm not doing so much and I can be more, where I told people, my closer friends, I'm going to have a date every Wednesday night with my guides, or whoever I want to call these people that give me wise information. And they're like, what do you mean a date? And I'm like, I hang out at home, I make a really good dinner. Sometimes we might watch a movie and discuss it. Sometimes we'll read a book and talk about it. Sometimes we'll just hang out and listen to music and talk. And they're like, right, woo-hoo. But the thing is, I will tell you, those have been some of my favorite ever nights of my life. Because I feel loved, I feel heard, I'm listening, I get wisdom, I have notebooks full of amazing information that comes through during those times. And I guess it's a version of being. You know, it's like, you could say you're being with yourself. You know, and sometimes I'll say, am I really talking to a guide, or is this just my mind? And at the beginning, after my near-death experience, when I kept hearing, and it was like, I think this is just my mind. And I would ask, and I always got the same answer, does it matter?
Right.
Wow.
No, it's like, who cares? It's wise. You know what I mean? And so I'm like, I love that. And now if I, every once in a while I'll still say it and it laughs, come on, are you still asking that question? Because it's just odd, right? So, but anyway, I totally recommend that. Whether or not you have any kind of connection with whatever kind of wisdom, you can if you allow it. You know, I believe, well, I don't know if you can or not, but what, might as well give it a whirl. Choose a night where you can be totally alone. Make some of your favorite food and just hang out with yourself and see what happens.
No phone, no that.
No phone, no phone, no Facebook, no.
No.
I think that is a perfect place to end. Thank you so much.